Hey, I'm John Leonardo, and this week we conclude our grand study in the book of Hebrews. And if anything the book has taught us is that Jesus is Lord, even in the intimate places of the marital bed. Be fair warned, this week there are adult themes. This is Internet Church. So here's partly the conversation that we've been having. We were reading in Hebrews 13 where it says to honor marriage and to keep the marriage bed undefiled. We used to think that undefiled meant just merely keeping things out. So try not to include lust, or try not to bring this, try not to bring that. The contrast is then what's supposed to be present. Like what is it that's actually present that the marriage bed is kept undefiled because something is actually present, right? Like, what is that thing?
It sounds to me like our whole conversation that we have about sin, and how sin is not so much the presence of something, but the absence of something. And so then we are freed from sin. Literally, it's the Spirit of God. So what is present? It's the Spirit. So let's have sex with the Spirit present. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
It's just a funny sentence. So I did have the desire to hear some of the ways in which this has shifted for my dear friend.
Okay, so you want to know how things have changed for me related to what is supposed to be?
This idea of keeping the marriage bed undefiled.
Yeah.
And that the undefiled is not merely the absence of, let's say, lust, or the absence of sexual objectification, or the absence of just mere pleasure seeking, but it's the presence of something. And I think that you've spoken to that in the past in relationship to the marriage bed, i.e. intercourse, sex, the deal, right?
I think I'll just do a little before and after situation, just for clarity. So prior to understanding who I am, like what my identity is, who I am, I believe that sex was created for pleasure, sure, but that it was an obligation to my husband to fulfill that thing in me, and vice versa, but mostly for me. Like, I understood that men were gonna enjoy sex. That was clearly communicated to me my whole entire life.
They're wanted all the
time. It's just gonna be out of control. I definitely knew to expect that. But no one ever really said that it was for me, so I just decided that like it was going to be. And so that became a hyperfixation for me and a crazy thing that I used for control. Okay, so there's that. So I always knew that sex was good, as far as like what it was created to do for our bodies, but I didn't know that sex itself was good and that it was pure. I knew that it felt good, but I didn't know that it was good. Like I didn't know that it was actually an act of praise, and that it was actually a reflection of the intimacy that I share in oneness with my Creator, now expressed in the physical becoming one with my husband. So once I understood who I was, who I am, then it was like, oh wait, sex is not something that I need, and not like a scratch that needs to be itched. Hate that language, but I used it, whatever. Now it's, oh my gosh, because we have this incredible abundance, because we were created for enjoying in one another and being one, we have this like overflow of that in the bedroom versus like me needing something and coming to him for that to be met or fulfilled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that
No,
fine?
yeah, no, it's tripping me out because I don't think I've ever thought about it in the lines of keep the marriage bed undefiled, i.e. keep it safe and secure and guarded against selfish interest and self-seeking. So that in the bed, there is no self-seeking, which is the opposite of any other pursuit. Like, ooh, I'm gonna get up in here and get mine. Right? Like, that's what I'm hearing, right?
And if that moment ever does rise up, I'll just like, we're all friends here. It's not as good. It's really not. Like as soon as I'm trying to get my own in our sweet little bedroom,
It's right over here.
I'm immediately just, oh gosh.
Right behind that wall.
Anyways. I don't know why I can say it and it's fine, and as soon as you do, I'm like, oh, it's so embarrassing.
Oh, we've seen each other naked. I don't want anybody to know.
I'm so embarrassed. So if those moments of selfishness rise up in me, I immediately just start praying prayers of thankfulness. Thank you, Jesus, that I get to do this. Like, thank you that I actually get to share in a body with my husband. Like, that is so crazy that you made us like freaking puzzle pieces. And so it's just like positioning myself in thankfulness for what we have because of him. And then it's just like, I'm less frustrated. It's just all better because I'm just like, this is so good. This is so cool. Wow, how great that we get to have sex with each other. Whoa, what a gift.
Just feel now like at the end of it, Morgan high fives you.
Good job. So fun.
At the end of this conversation?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that a part of it is, for me, it's changed in loving my wife outside of the bedroom, then shows itself up inside, because I know that in my past, it was always a lot of self-seeking, right? For what it's worth, I did not come to the marriage bed and to marriage in, virginal purity. So in the past, I was addicted to lust and it was always self-seeking. And any inkling of that within us feels icky, right? It feels icky. And so the invitation of having the Spirit there is a challenging one, but it does remind me of the Anglican marriage vows that say, with my body I thee worship, so that sex is a good, and sex in the agreement and the unity of exclusive lifelong commitment with one another. And then the beauty that when you come together in that way, there is a product, right? You actually give that product a name 9 months later. So that's a trip. So sex is good when what?
It feels good.
No.
And it is good.
I can't deny that.
Isn't that how you said it?
Just now?
No.
that was a different segment.
What did you say just now?
You're such a jerk.
Gotcha.
Okay. I believe that it is essential to know that you are pure. When you know that you are pure, you know that when you enter into sexual acts, that it is also pure because it is an extension of you and your partner. So my purity and your purity just meet up in this pure expression of what God has done in us and is in us, expressed in the ultimate act of pleasure. So
knowing who you are.
Yeah, but I don't know that sex is pure if I think that I'm some like dirty, rotten old human. So anything that I do is then an extension of a dirty, rotten old person. So then sex is dirty and like secretive and
100%, yeah, because it's the most
Carnal of acts.
yeah.
So if you believe that your carnality is somehow corrupted,
Yeah.
the moment you express your carnality, it's
An expression of who you really are, which is dirty. But guess what? I'm washed by the blood of the Lamb.
Can you say Jesus?
So to be fair to Augustine believed that sex was normal in the moral sense, but the good of sex was that it produced children. And he gave 2 reasons for Christians to be celibate. 1, he was concerned that sex might result in passion. And for Augustine, passions were a kind of perversion of emotions. He believed passions could obscure reason. Passions could become lust. Sex undertaken solely for pleasure and blind to its proper child-producing purposes. He worried sex would become an end when it should be a means towards a different end.
So still, it's a means.
Yeah.
Super good Adam one though.
Yeah, super good Adam because it's not a good itself. So that sex, for sex sake, is not a good for him. I mean, it's normal, it's amoral, but it opens itself up to passions, or it's a means by which an ultimate good of procreation actually happens. Right? So in order to be fair.
It's the whole relational intimacy part of sex.
Yeah, I wonder how Augustine would read Song of Solomon.
In Greek?
Actually, plot twist. That's why it's so problematic when you get to Romans 5:12 and Augustine's rendering of the Adam motif is because he didn't read Greek.
Oh, really?
Yep. And he was wiggity whack when it came to Romans 5 and messed it up for a ton of us.
Thanks, Augustine.
So I don't know how you can take all of that in. That's heavy, and it's not only heavy, but it's very intimate and personal. And it might challenge the way we've thought about how to relate to our bodies and how to relate to sex. I know it's challenged me as I've listened to Morgan talk about this in the past, but there is a very real place where, because of the lordship of Jesus, it's no longer merely abstaining from defilement, but defilement ought not to be present because something else fills the space. And that something else is his spirit, his fullness, his goodness. And his spirit, his fullness and goodness is present in something like sex. I mean, this is ultimately the grand scope of the letter of the Hebrews, that Jesus is Lord, so much so that the angels adore him, God adores him. He's better than Moses, he's better than Melchizedek, he's better than all of these things. And he has a practical life-lived impact so that we love one another earnestly, that we visit those who are in prison because they are part of our body, like the Christ body. And then we steward our individuated bodies in a really important and meaningful way, so much so that it shows up in the confines of a bed with your spouse. The lordship of Jesus is even present there. The great shepherd of the sheep is present there. And so as we transition into our groups, what does it look like for you personally to interact with what you've heard? And what does it look like to maybe build your life under the lordship of Jesus, or replace some erroneous ways of thinking with now what maybe Morgan has challenged us with? So I know that it's something I'm doing in my life. It's something that I'm doing with my spouse. And that's not only pertinent for those who have spouses, but for those who are single. There is a stewardship of the body that is present for us now and is just as holy, just as qualified, and just as valid right now. So think in your groups on how we actually interact with that which we've heard. When you come together in that way, there is a product, right? And you actually give that product a name 9 months later.
I don't have to do any evaluations. No, yeah, because I guess the OT that's like overseeing the district does each, and then
Okay, cool, bye.
They're so cool.
So you just do IEPs?
That's